The United States of America currently produces more crude oil today than at any point in its entire history. Yet, when a conflict breaks out 7,000 miles away in the Middle East, American drivers see the financial impact on their local reader boards within hours. If the U.S. pumps its own massive supply and imports very little from the Persian Gulf, why do foreign waterways dictate the numbers you pay to fill your tank? The concept of strict national energy independence ignores how global commodity markets actually function. Producing your own oil does not grant immunity from global price spikes. Look at this global energy map. Orange lines represent millions of barrels of crude flowing out of the Middle East daily. All that volume is forced through the Strait of Hormuz, a shipping lane only 21 miles wide. That single geographical pinch point handles roughly 20% of all petroleum consumed on Earth. Moving that much highly flammable, valuable liquid requires fleets of very large crude carriers. These massive ships navigate a highly contested, narrow corridor where a minor incident slows the entire procession. Control or disrupt this tiny stretch of water, and you effectively stall a fifth of the global energy supply. This diagram reveals the underlying rule of the market. Oil is not priced based on where it comes out of the ground. Those orange trade routes all feed into a single, unified global pricing node, establishing a baseline value for crude worldwide, represented by this yellow line. This baseline is tracked through crude benchmarks, primarily Brent and West Texas Intermediate, or WTI. These are the standardized financial reference prices that refiners everywhere use to buy raw petroleum. The exact value of those benchmarks is set by professional futures traders. These individuals and institutions buy and sell contracts for the future delivery of oil based on how much supply they believe will exist next month or next year. Because they are trading futures, the market is entirely forward-looking. Traders price in the mathematical risk of a shortage the moment a geopolitical threat emerges, long before a physical tanker is actually delayed. Today, automated algorithms and strict risk management protocols execute these trades in milliseconds. A concerning headline triggers immediate buying sprees, driving prices up instantly. Because the entire world relies on one continuous pool of oil, a sudden localized threat to supply in one hemisphere immediately registers as a price increase in the other. Geographic distance is erased. Watch what happens to the global price line during a disruption. If shipping traffic in the Strait of Hormuz slows due to a blockade or loss of navigation signals, the orange flow turns red. In response, the yellow price line spikes. Traders know millions of barrels are trapped. Anticipating a shortfall, oil surges. A yellow glow blankets the map, forcing numbers at an American gas pump to tick upward. For a U.S. refinery, the physical origin of their crude offers no financial protection. Even if they refine oil pumped directly from Texas, they have to bid against international buyers who are desperate to replace lost Middle Eastern barrels. They pay the new, inflated global benchmark price. Refineries operate on tight margins. When their raw material costs increase, they pass the difference down the supply chain, raising the wholesale price of gasoline and diesel. The American consumer is financially tethered to that global price node. Domestic supply chains run perfectly, but local pocketbooks absorb the shock of overseas conflicts regardless. The math hits households quickly. When fuel costs rise, people burn a larger percentage of their monthly income just commuting to work, leaving less capital for retail, dining, and services. The corporate sector feels the exact same pressure. Freight carriers, shipping lines, and logistics networks rely on diesel to move cargo. When their fuel expenses inflate, the cost of moving every physical product goes up. Since energy is the baseline input required to manufacture and transport almost everything we consume, an isolated oil spike acts as a catalyst for broad economy-wide inflation. What begins as a maritime traffic issue thousands of miles away cascades into a macroeconomic drag that slows domestic consumption and weakens overall growth. Notice how the system attempts to correct itself. Soft blue arrows appear as other producing nations release strategic reserves or increase output to fill the gap. But the 20% void left by Hormuz is simply too massive to replace quickly. The yellow price line stabilizes, but at a permanently higher level. As long as petroleum remains the primary fuel for global logistics, and as long as it is traded as a unified commodity, Economic isolation is impossible. Every nation participates in the same market. Pulling back to the global view, the scale of the vulnerability is clear. The Strait of Hormuz remains a tiny red pulse, yet it sustains that elevated yellow price line across the entire planet. Until the mechanics of how we price and distribute energy evolve, a 21-mile stretch of water on the other side of the globe will continue to dictate the cost of American daily life.